Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Are you a sensitive person? Are you somebody who's intuitive? Are you an empath? Somebody who can sense something is happening? Maybe you're one of the many people who realize that things have not been quite right for some time, but maybe this puts you into a state of fear. Maybe you feel things are not right, but you don't know what to do about it, or it seems too much for you. And this might come down to your energy not being, I don't know, in balance, something like that. Well, today my guest is Alison Dobell from sensitivespirit.com, who is going to tell us about what it's like to be a sensitive person and also an event that's coming up that you might wish to attend. Alison, welcome to the channel. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for having me on your channel and letting me talk about the summit and highly sensitive people.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with the sensitive people because obviously sensitive, the word sensitive for a lot of people might be a subjective thing because we're sensitive to all sorts of different things. Somebody's sensitive to atmosphere, to feelings. My lovely partner, the lovely Julia, is an empath, so she finds it very difficult if she's watching things like animals suffer. She feels that pain and gets very emotional as a result of that. And I'm assuming that's the sort of thing. We also have people who are sensitive, but they might be sensitive in a sort of more wokish way, which is not really the area that I think that you're referring to.
No, definitely not. I'm not talking about coming from a snowflake sensitive standpoint at all. Yes, it's more the empathic, intuitive, empath type sensitivity, which is actually a thing that psychologists have diagnosed now. About 20 to 30% of the population are known as HSPs, highly sensitive people. It is diagnostic. A bit like autism is diagnostic. There's no actual test for it per se. It's the traits you have. And like autism, it's a spectrum. So some people are very high up on the sensitivity scale. There's a checklist that you can do to find out. So obviously, the more ticks you give on the list, the more highly sensitive you are. There's also a science term for it, sensory sensitivity processing, because we do process things differently. We look at the world differently. Physically, our senses are heightened. Our senses of smell, of touch and taste are heightened. We have a much higher reactive nervous system. And we're the feelers of the world. We feel energy. So a lot of energy workers, empaths, intuitives are usually highly sensitive, known as an HSP.
And this isn't a bad thing at all if you're sensitive to things, presumably.
It's not. It's not necessarily easy, especially in this world. I'm like the lovely Julia. I'm an animal empath. So it can be very difficult to see all the suffering, cruelty in the world, and I get very affected by that. I also pick up on energies if I'm out in the shops or just out and about. I definitely picked up on the collective energy. In 21 and 22 particular, I went into a very dark place, and it took me a good while to pull myself out of that using the techniques that are going to be as part of the summit. So yes, but it is, from what I've learned about it, it's a survivalist system that about 20 to 30% of the population have. And it's the same with all species. They've done various studies. For example, there was one study, a group of fish were put in a new environment, and 80% of the fish went and just, woohoo, this is great, I've got a bigger pond, and they went swimming off, all excited, and they all got eaten. 20% hung back and like, hang on a minute, this is a new environment, I'm not sure about this, let's just assess the area and see what's happening. And they managed to survive. So the psychologists put those down in the HSP, highly sensitive people, or then animals or fish category. So it seems that it's a survival mechanism for species to be able to survive.
Yes. So I mean, there's a little bit of logic going on in there. If you're aware of something and think, hang on, I'm feeling that tingling sensation which is warning me, but I can't necessarily see anything. I'll just be a little bit cautious going into whatever that environment is. And you mentioned to me that you work as an energy worker. So just for the benefit of myself as well as members of the audience, what does that mean?
It means, from my training, well, I started off in teaching. I was very stuck and I didn't know a way out. I felt very trapped because I was actually on quite a good salary, but very, very unhappy within that. And I'd done all the self-help tools. I was in that community, the kind of new age, if you like, community. Went on lots of workshops, had a whole library of self-help books, and they helped to a point, definitely helped to a point, but they didn't shift my situation. And then I started retraining in psychotherapy. That didn't work. I just didn't align with me at all. But I did do CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and started helping people with that, which does have some definite evidence-based success around it, but it wasn't enough for me. And then I actually trained in energy therapy, a technique called emotional freedom technique, and then later something called matrix re-imprinting, which you're using your body. It's called somatic healing. You're going into your body, and it's based on the theory, which has been proved, that we store trauma in our body, and unless we can actually access that, connect to it and release that, we're not going to really shift our vibration and our reality, because basically if that trauma is stuck within our bodies, which is also then ripples out into our energy system, that is what we will continue to attract. And literally within 6 months of doing that training, I had managed, and I only realized it's weird later, about 6 months later, I was like, oh, I guess that was because of that training I did. I'd managed to leave my job of 25 years in education, which literally was killing the life force out of me. I can't tell you how depressed and stuck I felt. I'd also met my now lovely husband within that time. So what had happened to me, I'd had a massive shift of energy, and I'd managed to release a lot of the stuck trauma from my life to shift my vibration. So I was able to clear my energetic field and attract better things that I wanted into my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So do you work with other people to help them do that, the
Yes.
energy work that you do?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and I imagine that some people, if it's within you, it can take a bit more time than others. It's not just a one size fits all type situation.
It really is, yeah. But one of the things that's been coming up, which is good news from many of the speakers in the summit, is that because I did my big shift 10 years ago, literally coming up to June 2014, I had that first initial training and my first big shift in energy. And the energies were a lot denser back then. Now, I don't know if you've noticed it, Richard, but things are speeding up. You can feel the energies are speeding up. It's very difficult to explain, but it feels different. There's a lot more light pouring onto the planet, which is why there is so much seeming chaos as well, because it's shining a light on it's bringing the unconscious conscious, you could say, if you want to bring Carl Jung into it. It's shining a light on all those shadow aspects that have been hidden all that time. And that's why there's so much seeming chaos in the 3D world, because they've got nowhere to run anymore. They've been able to hide for all these years. So actually the energies are much more in a line now with helping us do those shifts and do that healing on ourselves, because it all starts, actually, I think we've been thinking and we've been told and programmed that the way to make yourself feel better is to solve the external.
Yes,
solve what's
take a
going
few
on outside.
pills.
Yeah, and then we'll feel better. It's actually the other way around, and that's come across with so many of the speakers on the summit as well, that if we can do the work on ourselves, that then ripples out into the collective, a bit like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, starting with yourself, which a lot of people don't like hearing that because they think, oh, it takes too long. It's not about that. We need to sort out the outside
Yes.
stuff first. And it's a bit of both as well. I'm not saying it's the only way, but for the people registering for the summit, that is basically the general theme, is lots of strategies and techniques to raise our own vibrations, shift our own energy, because that will ripple out into our own electromagnetic field, which will then go out into the collective. And it's so powerful. These higher vibrations are so much more powerful than the lower, darker vibrations. So that's basically how it works. But all the speakers, well, the majority of the speakers, we do talk along those
Well,
lines.
you've mentioned the summit, so we better say what this is then. This is an event that's happening. And are you the organizer of this event?
Yes, I organised it. I'm the host. It's called the New Earth Summit, and it's what it says on the tin. It's about we are creating our own new world, because clearly the old one isn't working very well for the majority of humanity. I'll just quickly do the practicalities, if that's all right. So it launches on the 1st of June. It's for 22 days. There's 22 speakers, so each speaker has a day, 24 hours each, where their interview is aired. But people can start registering from the 20th of May. It's free to register, free to watch, but there is the opportunity to purchase an upgrade pass. That means you can get all the interviews and all the transcripts with lots and lots of bonus interviews as well, plus a live workshop with me at some point during the summit in June, where I talk about how I did shift my energy and the strategies I use to create a much better life for myself. So I'm keeping it.
Is it, sorry to interrupt, is this online, or is it in a venue that people
No,
come
it's
to?
all online. It's all
Right.
online. Yes. So people
Because when you said
register
24
online.
hours, I was just thinking of those poor speakers having to speak for 24 hours. I thought, blimey, it's a lot of material to get through, and how do you stay awake? So yes, so that makes much more sense now you said that it's online. So anybody can come along, and obviously there's not limited numbers then.
No, exactly. Yeah. Open to as many people. So the upgrade pass has got all the bonuses, my workshop, and the interviews, lifetime access. I'm keeping it very affordable at £29. I'm not going to put it up as many summits do every week. Oh, get it now, it's going to go up next week. I'm keeping it at that price because I want as many people as possible to keep these interviews, because there's so much wisdom and hope, and there's so many techniques and strategies. Some of them you need to listen to more than once, maybe listen to, and you can take it on one level, and then maybe in a next week you listen to it again and you can take the information on at a different level. So that's why I'm keeping that very low, and all the proceeds for that go to my horse rescue centre in France.
Oh, so right, okay.
That's
a horse rescue centre. That sounds very noble, especially if you like horses. And the lovely Julia loves horses, so there you are.
She can come and visit. We're only across the English Channel.
Is the summit, is it only available during the period of that time, or can you, once you've logged in and it's happened, can you get the videos and re-watch them or download them afterwards? Are there sort of limitations to this?
Yes, it's for 22 days. So if you want them a lifetime access, that's where you purchase the upgrade pass, and then you get them for life for £29. And that includes all the bonuses and the workshop and everything. Yes, so that's for life. Yeah.
So I know that you've got a lot of speakers there. Should we just find out some of the speakers so that you can entice some people along?
Yeah, so basically, I just want to say a massive thank you to all the speakers who took part. They have been so generous with their time and their knowledge and their wisdom. I've absolutely loved it. I've definitely shifted my vibration just interviewing them for the past few weeks. Um, and when I wrote to them to ask them to take part, I was mindful of the fact that I only wrote to people who, when I'd listened to them, made me feel better. I think that's the point of it. And it's not about spiritual bypassing. This summit is the opposite of that. So if you're within, it's got a very spiritual perspective to it. But if you've within that spiritual community that only want to look at the light and don't want to acknowledge the dark, then I'm not trying to put people off, but it probably wouldn't be for you, because we do go into how we got to where we are now and why, how we are easily mind controlled. But the ethos of the summit was from a quote I read actually, which said, "What is the greatest challenge to being alive?" And the answer was to witness the injustice of this world, but not allow it to consume your light, which can be quite a challenge, especially in today's environment around the world. So that was the ethos of the summit. And so, for example, we're going to start the summit off with Kerry Kay, who's got a very successful YouTube channel. She's a spiritual teacher, and I gave her the challenge of, could you just summarize basically how it all started, how creation started, how we got here, and why, in about 10 minutes. And she did a sterling job of doing that. And for me, it's like having the awareness of why we're in this situation we're in. It really does help if you've got that wider perspective. And that's what a lot of the speakers give you, rather than feeling all we are is in this 3D matrix bubble. And if you are awake, which most of your viewers are, obviously, Richard, to what's going on and the lies and the deception, that is a really, really scary place to be if you haven't got that bigger spiritual perspective. So that's the general theme from the speakers. Stella Fairbairn talks about basically our biggest block to ascension are the Luciferian blood contracts that we've been tricked into with our tacit agreement. So our silence for these entities is an agreement. So she goes through a process of actually how to do our own decree of sovereignty, which unlocks those
So
bonds.
what would be an example of one of those contracts, just for people who are thinking, "Oh, that sounds fascinating," but what kind of agreement would they have?
Well, that one is very specific to all the speakers. I've made this, my intention was to make this summit very solution based. We do go into the darker aspects of why we're here and what they've done. We don't dwell on it, but we do look at it. And all the speakers come up with their own modalities and protocols of different ideas and suggestions that you can do to unlock yourself from these bonds and contracts. Stella's particular one is, I mean, if you go to her website, the details will be when you register, all the speakers' details will be on there. But hers is actually using our own blood to revoke that blood covenant. That's her specific one of doing
Yes.
it. But
But
each individual,
I suppose what I'm just getting at, I mean, I don't want to give too much away because that's what people are coming for, but just to give them a sense of what you mean by, or at least from my point of view, what you mean by a Luciferian blood contract. What would I have done in my life that has a blood contract with any Luciferian? Because I don't remember any popping up in
well,
my...
that's the thing. We're born into it, Richard, especially in the Western world. As soon as you're born into a world of trauma, which has been designed to be that way, to keep us in trauma, because the entities that have been controlling us they can't actually create. They've split off from the God source energy. So they can't create. So they use us. We are powerful creative beings. They use us to manipulate us, to control the world they want, and they feed off our energy. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it's, I mean, it's not like having a contract with the council tax or with the HMRC, those sort of things. So I'm
No,
just
it's
yeah,
when
that's
you're
why I was
born. Yeah, I mean, when babies are born, their heels are cut, and it's very traumatic. And it all starts off with this blood covenant. Well, it's like everything else. Did you sign a contract, to pay the council tax? All of these, it's all our tacit agreements. It's done through our silence and not opposing it. So it's a similar principle to that. As soon as we're born, it's the same with
so
when our parents get our birth certificates
yes.
registered. It's all that same principle.
So I mean, just on that, on the saying that the heels are cut. I mean, presumably it's the midwife or the doctor who is present, unless you have a home birth. And as far as my two of my children had a home birth, and I don't remember them cutting the heel of my
No, that's
children.
that's if you're in the Western medical system hospital. Yeah, I
And they
mean,
and they so would the midwife have been in on that then?
no, it's the same with the majority of doctors and nurses over the last few years. They've got no clue what they're doing. They're just told, they get these orders from above, and they got told, you need to do this because of this. But actually, like the birth certificate, it does enter you into this contract. So it is about reversing these. When you go, Stella talks about when you go into supermarkets and what you buy, because you're not opposing it, you're buying it, you're basically agreeing to it. And you can do your own contracts to cut those
Right.
ties. Yeah. So that's what Stella Fairbairn does. And it's on her website. There's Sarita Sol is a shamanic practitioner. So she gives a shamanic perspective and talks about, because we are in this realm designed and based on trauma, a lot of our soul pieces get fractured and splinter off because it's just too dense and traumatic. So she talks about soul retrieval, retrieving these parts of ourselves to make us whole and integrate ourselves again. So she gives lots of advice and tips on that. She talks about as well why people get so addicted is because when these soul fragments splinter off, if somebody's had a lot of trauma, it leaves holes in our energy fields where it's easy for addictive entities to get in. So that's a fascinating conversation with Sarita. I talked with Abby Wynn about PTSD, particularly in terms of the last 4 years for many people and how people can recover from that. In fact, that's reminded me as well with the PTSD. One of the things I wanted to do with the summit was create a community of people that we can support each other with. There'll also be the option to join a Facebook group when you register, that we can then create a community. Because I feel we talked about it with Catherine Edwards. We talked about it, hacks of surviving these times. And we talked about when you start to wake up to how this world actually works, and it's not exactly what we've been told it is, let's say. A lot of the speakers have used the analogy of you have to go through a process of grief. And it starts with shock and denial. I know I went through all of these phases when I went down the countless rabbit holes that I went down when I started learning about all these things. And it is normal. We have to go through these phases because it is shocking when you find out how much lies have been told to us and the
Yes.
nefarious things they do. So one of the things a lot of people get stuck in certain parts of this grieving process. I know there's a lot of people at the moment on the angry phase of it, and anger can be a powerful tool to initiate change, but if it's channeled in the wrong way, it can be very destructive, and then it can feed the darker forces. So it's about, like I said at the beginning, stepping out of that fear vibration. I personally now am working with a lot of people on the hopelessness and depression and almost apathy part of it. And a lot of people get stuck in these places. And I think a lot of people have got PTSD from over the last few years. And I'm not aware of these people being given a platform to actually talk about what happened to them. I mean, I had it pretty bad over the last few, I took quite a big hit, but at least me and my husband were on the same page. We had each other. We lost tens of thousands, but we had that buffer. It was our pension, but I'm confident I'll be able to recreate that. Um, but I didn't have it anywhere near as bad as some people. I mean, some people have lost their entire families, aren't talking to them, they can't see their grandchildren, they've lost their jobs, their businesses, their homes. I mean, it's absolutely horrific if you
Yes.
haven't got that bigger picture. And I want to be able to provide a community that people can actually share what they went through. And I don't mean it in a way of having an echo chamber of everybody moaning about it all,
No,
because
no.
then it stays stuck.
Yes.
But these experiences, I really feel strongly need to be heard and acknowledged and validated, and actually be told that was horrendous what you went through. How
Yes.
can we move through it and work through it? So with Abby Wynn, we do talk about PTSD and again other exercises and techniques to help us move through these stages if we are stuck, which I feel a lot of people are at the moment. Lucy Davis, we talk about navigating relationships during these times, including our relationship with ourselves, but also, as we were just talking, if, family members, work colleagues are being particularly, not very understanding about your stance, shall we say.
Or call you conspiracy theorists, as
Well,
indeed my son does. So,
exactly.
but what can you do? Uh, it's
It
like,
is very, very difficult, isn't it? My whole family still think I'm crazy. You know, they were
yes.
saying to me at the time, "Oh, just take it, then you'll get your life back." And I'm like, "But that I don't give in to blackmail from the
Yes.
government." And they're saying, "Well, it's not blackmail if you agree to it." I say, "But I don't agree to it."
Well, I don't agree to it. And as far as taking your life back, have a word with all those people who've just dropped dead suddenly. But anyway.
Exactly, but it's how to navigate those relationships with,
Yes.
it's easy for some people if they can just detach themselves from that world now, but a lot of people can't. They're in relationships, jobs,
Oh, I
communities.
get. I mean, a lot of my viewers exactly fall into that, and they do email me in, and they say, I'm in that place of fear. And actually, if I put out a slightly light-hearted poke at the nonsense that we've been having to live through, they are very thrilled that there is somebody there who's put his head above the parapet and is laughing at it. And not going, oh my God, look at this, like so many YouTubers and other people on the platforms are doing, in order to get the views. And I try not to do that as much as possible, so that I can give optimism and say, look, it's happening, but let's not drag ourselves down into the pit and be with them. But I do know there's a lot of people out there, and of course, anything that can help them get out of that very narrow band of fear has got my support.
Exactly. And it's not as if it's finished. Yes, that pressure to take something to keep your job. I mean, I was in France. I couldn't even, I was allowed to go to the local shops. I couldn't go anywhere else. I couldn't go to restaurants, cafes, cinemas. That has stopped. But my community turned on me. They still haven't come back to me. Me and my husband were kicked out of quite a few groups from our fellow humans and expats. That was shocking.
Mm.
Obviously, the lovely president of France said he wanted to piss off the unvaccinated as much as possible. So it was like we were getting bombarded from all sides, but I had the tools to be able to pull myself out of it. Because I'm highly sensitive, it shook me on a nervous system level. It took me about 2 years for my nervous system to recalibrate. And I know there's a lot of people still stuck there.
Yes. Yes. No. Well, let's hope that the lady you just mentioned is going to be able to help them.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
Well,
did you want to mention any more of your wonderful speaker?
Honey Golden talks about her experience of the death of ego, which basically is what we're doing now. The old world is crumbling, it's a given. And the speakers talk about that. What we want to do with this community and the speakers is basically it's a choice. You don't have to stand amongst the devastation. If you're just looking through a 3D lens, it is incredibly scary if you haven't got that bigger spiritual perspective, which a lot of the speakers do give the explanations about what's going on. So, yeah, I don't know if you know of Pam Gregory.
Oh
She's an
yes,
astrologer.
I've
I
met
listened to,
Pam.
oh, she's great. I listened to one of her interviews last week, and she gave a great analogy about imagine you've been living in this old, damp, derelict house. Your family have had it for generations. It's leaking, it's falling to bits, it's dangerous. You know you need to get rid of it. You want to build a new house. It's the same principle as creating a new earth. So you go and meet with the architect, you draw up the new plans, you've got all the resources you need, but the old house has got to come down first. So it's your choice to either stand in the rubble and have all the dust and debris and the chaos that it involves, all the diggers and everything crumbling down, which is what so many are doing. They've got that lens in and they're in it. Or you can either step back knowing that we are powerful co-creators, we are creating a new earth, but you can do it from a much calmer standpoint. And that's what the key lesson throughout all the speakers, the general theme seems to be. They're coming from lots of different modalities and have got different techniques, but the main theme is very much of hope, based upon, these times have been prophesized for years, and also the astrology now is backing it all up. So just try not to be fearful. I know that's easy to say, but if you have this bigger spiritual perspective about it, try to step back. The more of us that can actually stand in that calmer space, observing what's going on, knowing that we are actually creating a new earth, which is actually going to be for the benefits of humankind and the animal kingdom, how it was always meant to be, the original organic matrix, rather than this inverted 3D matrix. Their time is over. They know that. They're panicking and throwing everything at us because so much light is shining down on us now. The energies are right for us to co-create this new earth. But just have that awareness that it's a foregone conclusion. The old world is crumbling, but not to just hide away in fear while it's happening. We've got the responsibility as well to create that new earth. Now, for
What?
this summit, it is more of an energetic basis, but there's also practical. For example, I spoke to Amanda from the People's Health Alliance. That's a perfect example of how we co-create new earth with our communities
Yes.
as well.
So I was going to say, what happens to those people who are just not on board? They're not going to summits like this, or they're not watching any videos, or they don't meet any. They're just. I mean, I can think of a load of people who are so unswitched on to any of this. What happens to them when the old earth crumbles and the new earth comes? Do they just, by not participating at all, just go, "Oh look, we've got a new earth, isn't this great?" Are they, Do they not play a part, or do they get left behind and we're waving goodbye to them?
Well, that's what some people, I don't know if you've heard people talk about the splitting timeline. So we're in that timeline now where we could
Yes.
have chosen one or the other, and keep hopping between the two. Some speakers are saying now we're at that point in time with the energies and with the astrology that actually you've got to choose one or the other.
But if you
But
don't know that you've got to choose that, so I'm thinking clearly of like my son, for example, who hasn't a clue about any of this, doesn't follow any of this, am I going to sort of lose him to an old planet?
well, I'm the same with my family, Richard. They're exactly like your son. They don't believe anything of this. They listen to the BBC religiously, think every word is gospel. I did talk about this with Catherine Edwards actually, and we both agreed that it's not about whether you believe or you don't believe in what's going on. It's it's where your consciousness is. New Earth is consciousness driven. And I was talking as an example of the lovely lady who we rescue the horses from. She is within that category, like our families, believes everything the media and the government talk about. I think she's had at least 5 of those now, and sadly, her health has deteriorated significantly over the last couple of years. But she lives from the most heart-centered space I think you could ever meet. She's the kindest, most generous. She's a pensioner now. She lives very frugally, let's say. She takes in all the waifs and strays in terms of cats, dogs. She rescues all these horses from the meat man because they like to eat them in France. And so for me, of course, she's going to come to New Earth. She's a living
Right.
example of New Earth.
So despite the fact that she doesn't necessarily believe it and thinks it's all a bit weird, because she's actually just doing it from the heart anyway, she's fine. But what about, I mean,
Yeah.
those people who are just ambivalent?
Like I said, it's
Which must
consciousness.
be a huge number of people. I mean, are they just going to? I'm going to put this in quite straight terms. Are they just going to snuff it? Do we just lose them, or are they there, but are they sort of still in their old way of thinking, but finding the world a different place, or do they just not fit in, or do they have a moment of revelation and go, "Oh, blimey, I can no longer buy highly processed, horrible, nasty." Synthetic food. All I've got is the option of buying healthy, organic, jolly good food, and the skies are nice now. They're not overcast and being sprayed with whatever it was my dad used to tell me they were being sprayed with. I mean, does anybody know really what's going to happen to the
There do
people who...
seem to be different views on that. Some people are talking about a real split of people and 2 Earths. In fact, I don't know if you've heard of Dolores Cannon. She was a few decades ago talking about the world split. Then there will be 2 Earths, and people who aren't ready yet to evolve. And I'm not saying this as better or worse at all, but some people on a soul level still want to experience that kind of 3D reality.
But will we be able to interact with them? Will they see us, or will they just...
I did ask that a couple of times because I don't know the answer to that, and I've asked it. It's almost like the answer I got, and I can't remember which one it was, but I know I've asked it at least twice, is it won't be relevant because we'll be on a different vibration. So in a practical sense, I guess no. But I think we're talking about quite unconscious people. Kerry Kay, I remember her saying that a few decades ago, it looked like only a small percentage of humanity would ascend. But apparently, the increase in consciousness has been so great that the majority of humans now have that choice to make that option if they want. And it goes back to if you're a service to self or a service to others person. And if you are generally, if you are trying to think of an example, walking behind somebody in the street and they dropped £5 out of their pocket, you'd pick
Would
it
you
up and
keep it or
sell.
hand it back
Yeah,
to them?
that kind of thing. It's a silly example, but if you're kind of putting others, whether it's the environment, children, animals, old people, whoever, if you're giving your time and energy to that and you really care about something outside of your reality, you have that empathy, then you've got a higher level of consciousness, which is what the new earth is all about. And
So,
that's what we're creating. If you're still that kind of service to self people, service to self person, your soul on that level knows that that personality aspect of their soul still needs some experience in a lower density vibration.
so in other words, is it goodbye to thugs and murderers and con men and all the nasty people? They're just going to be out of our lives.
Yeah,
Well, that sounds good.
it's
I'm quite
great.
happy with that. That might be all the enforcement officers and bailiffs and some of the police. Some of the
Exactly.
nasty.
They won't be able to survive in the vibrations of new earth. It's
Right.
such a higher vibration, they literally just won't be able to live in that vibration.
Gosh, hope they know that's coming. Now, I hope that's not sort of made me suddenly just because it would be nice to live in a world in which that does not happen. That's all I'm saying. I'm not wishing anybody any ill in case any, thing is listening to me at this precise moment. But most people do not want to be living in fear, and people who perpetrate that fear deliberately on purposely to get one over or to trample down on people, that it's just not right. We know it intrinsically. We know
Exactly.
what's right and what's wrong, and when people work from what's wrong because they're getting a kick out of it, then there's no place for them in a new earth in my mind. So that sounds really good. So you got how many days did you say?
22. Yeah. So it will
22
finish on
days.
the 22nd of June. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so what people have got to do, I know you use the word register. Now, my audience will be slightly going, oh, register, that means giving away title. Do you mean...
Oh, no.
Do you
Click on
mean
the
join
link,
up?
basically. Join up. Click on the link.
Join up, yes. Because I know people get very worried when they hear, when they get into the lawful stuff and they go, oh, registers, legislation, terminology and all of that. So I just like to make that clear so that it isn't like, oh, it sounds...
No, you don't need to cut yourself and sign it in blood.
No, you're just joining up so that you can take part in it. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
And so people can start from the 20th of May. Presumably there's a website with all the speakers and further information they can sort of get excited about.
Yes, well, when people register, they'll be given all the information on that. But yes, it will be on my website as well, sensitivespirit.com, sensitive-spirit.com. But when they register, I will send...
Or when they join up.
When they join up, sorry, not register. Join up.
So sensitive-spirit.com is your website, and I'll leave that link in the description so people can have a look at that. And it starts from the 1st of June. And
yes.
When do you, having spoken to all these very enlightened people, when do you think this new earth, this new stuff is going to sort of start coming into fruition?
Well, many of them, interestingly, say it's here now. The energies are here now, a bit like going back to the analogy with Pam Gregory, that the vision's there now, the plans have been laid, the resources are all there. It literally is just for us to now create the bones of it, if you like. But the energies are here, which is when you see the absolute terror that they're trying to feed us with the pandemic treaties and all the rest of it. You've spoken I know to so many people about the shenanigans that are happening. If you're looking through that 3D lens, it's terrifying. But if you take the bigger perspective, actually the more chaotic it gets on one level, the better it is, because we're getting closer and closer to it. And it's not a case that we have to completely wait till the old crumbles, because we can create now. The energies are there now. If you listen to astrologers, they get so excited every month. The energies is, the Schumann resonance, all these solar flares and flashes, as we're getting more and more of them, the photon belt. don't quite understand all of the technology around that myself, but I know I listen to a lot of astrologists who talk about it. So the energies are here now. It's up to us to create it. I personally think we are getting help, whether that's galactic help or the so-called white hats, because I don't think the likes of me and you would be able to talk as we are if we weren't getting some help. I think we'd have been carted off to these FEMA camps over the last few years. So I think that's encouraging, the fact that we're
Yes.
able to have this conversation. But I also think we can't just wait for other people to create it for us, because that's been one of the programs in the old inverted matrix, is this savior complex, always waiting for somebody
Yes.
else to come and do something and fix something for it, which is what the nanny state has done to so many. It's taken away our independence and that, well, our feeling of how powerful we are. We've been told we're not powerful. We need these external bodies to control us and make everything better.
Yes.
Clearly, they haven't. So I think it's a dual aspect thing. I do think we're getting help. I think it's from a divine source and or a galactic source. People are seeing more and more ships now, if you want to believe in that. I do. I've actually seen some myself.
Some what ships?
Ships, so galactic. I think we're getting a lot of galactic support as
You
well.
mean people are seeing things in the sky? I mean, just
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Okay.
happening more and more. But I also think they can't intervene with free will.
Mm.
And I also think it's almost like this is a spiritual test for humans as well, for humanity, to like take back our power after centuries and centuries. Some say thousands, some say billions. We don't know. It doesn't matter really, of being enslaved and controlled. We're in such an exciting time that we have got these energies now, and this support is there for us. But we have to take action
Yes.
ourselves. And that can just be, people think, well, what can I do? I don't want to go on, interviews like this or set up a podcast or whatever. Literally doing work on yourself and maybe helping your neighbor, just raising your consciousness bit by bit, or like the wonderful People's Health Alliance are doing, that initiative. I think that is the perfect example of creating new earth, and I think that's going to snowball that
I I
philosophy.
I absolutely agree. I mean, even if you're getting help, let's say you're I don't know. Let's say you're somebody who's been kidnapped by somebody, and you're chained to a radiator. I had to take a famous case, and if somebody comes to save you, if you then just think, oh, I can't exist unless I'm chained to a radiator all the time, you're actually in no better position. Whereas if you're able to take back responsibility for yourself, even if help does come, then you're going to be part of a new world in which actually, okay, thanks for getting me out of this shed with this radiator. Now you've got rid of the shackles and all of that. I can now I've got the ability to do something because I've started to take back those skills. I've learned new crafts and new skills, and I can actually build a new house. And you know what? I can plumb in a radiator if I so wish, but I won't be chaining myself to it. I'll just have the heat from it. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. So it does seem that, to me, it seems very important that we take back those responsibilities, and I've been saying that on the show for a long time, to stand in our own power and understand it. But if help comes along and says, hey, here's the road to freedom, you may as well take advantage of that. But once you're there, you're not then just in their care all the time. It's like, oh, great, can you look after me now and feed me and go and get the food? You're actually a responsible person. So as you say, I do think that's absolutely true. There's a dual purpose to it, because how do you look at yourself in the mirror if you're always looking for somebody else to do every bloody thing for you?
Well, that keeps you in that fear vibration, doesn't it? Because your
They could
happiness, your
stop.
well-being and your survival, if it's always dependent on an external force, you're never going
Yes,
to feel that sovereignty and that power yourself. And
exactly.
when you were talking, it reminds me of that story that if you want to help somebody, yeah, you can go and help them catch a fish, or you can give them a fishing rod to teach them how to fish themselves. You know what I mean? It's the
Yes,
same
yes,
analogy, isn't it?
absolutely. That you did it better than I did. Yeah, and so, well, no, that's quite right. So then they can fish, keep themselves going, but they can also teach others.
Exactly.
And then it goes, and then nobody needs to have to worry about, except that there's no fish left because everybody's been bloody catching a fish, you swines. But you know what I mean. That sounds brilliant. And so the energies are happening here. That it's all happening now. We've got our responsibilities to educate ourselves, stand in there and push back the fear, which it sounds like what your summit coming up is to help educate people and give them the confidence to face the turbulence, if you like, so that as we start to build this new earth, we're all going to be okay, which
Exactly.
is
Another
a good
analogy,
message.
actually, that people have used, it's been used for a while, is it's almost like giving birth. We are birthing these new frequencies, and people are saying we are in the birth now, which is why it can seem so scary. And the
Yes,
contractions are getting stronger and stronger because New Earth is getting nearer and nearer. And as I said, many people think it's already here. We are creating it now. But that's another analogy that try not to be scared because there is something wonderful at the end of it
yes,
because we are birthing it. I think it's so important, like we said, that we take such a big, strong stance on creating it, not waiting for others to do it. I think that's one of the key points I think we need to learn. Yeah.
brilliant. Well, thank you so much for telling us about the summit. I do hope that a lot of people will get it on board and join up and listen to all 22 or join the higher tier so that they can listen to it as and when, because people I know are very busy with their energies.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I hope the horses get saved,
Thank you very much.
which would be great. Alison, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you. Can people get in touch with you purely just to do energy work, that
Yes,
sort of thing?
yes, there's a contact on my website. Yes, if people want to get in touch with me. But what I do want to do, obviously, I've got limited capacity for one-to-one work. But
Yes.
what I would like to do through creating a community on Facebook is maybe do more group work because I can then, going back to the fishing rod analogy, I can then teach people very simple energetic tools that immediately, and they've been, proven by science, it's not just fluffy woo-woo stuff,
Right.
um, can immediately bring down the cortisol levels and calm down that amygdala fight or flight or freeze response. The more people that have these simple tools literally at their fingertips, the better. So yes, there's the option of working with me one-to-one or, possibly
In
creating
groups.
groups.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So sensitive-spirit.com. I'll leave the link in the description. And good luck with it all. I hope it all
Thank
goes
you.
well. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's all going to be okay. Just push back the fear and do go and investigate how to take back responsibility and all of that. I'm sure I'll have more exciting guests for you to help on that same theme. But in the meantime, I shall leave you with more monologues and other wonderful guests. But from Alison and I, thank you so much for watching. Till next time, goodbye.